So I have a big old thing saying, should I just
click continue and then we'll be good.
all right.
Well, good morning. Good morning to everyone who is joining us on this webinar. Well, apparently you've heard everything we have to say already. We
You
didn't
know what
realize.
we're doing for Christmas.
Yes, you all know what we're planning for Christmas. So we're celebrating that holiday, obviously. So thank you. And thank you very much to JD Luck for pointing that out. We could have, I doubt it, but we could have said some terrible things. So I'm grateful for that. It is my deep, great pleasure to introduce Susan Packard to you today. And I think what I've been so excited about with this series is we've been able to share just really smart businesswomen with the world and with our students. And I think that to me has always been the most exciting aspect of being a Tepper is the consistent exposure to people who care deeply about business and are successful. And Susan is a terrific example of this. She has built an unbelievably successful career as an entrepreneur and as a businesswoman, and has built the brands many of us know, CNBC, Food Network, which I love, but I think we all, and I know our students love and are very committed to HGTV, which Susan grew into the business it is today as COO. So she comes as a very accomplished businesswoman to join us this morning. But I think my personal deep excitement, and for those of you who were listening in to our conversation will realize whenever I'm with Susan, I feel calm and I feel grounded and I feel the world's going to be okay. And that's not always the case with business people we spend time with. And so
Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. And so when we were talking about our time today, I know we'd initially shared this as a conversation, but really that would rob you of the experience of just hearing Susan talk about herself and about a message that Susan cares very deeply about. And I know for many of our women at the moment, and we know women are clamming down on their ambition at the moment because of the challenges of this pandemic, I think it's more important that we just hear from Susan a bit and hear what it looks like to be fully human in the places we work and the places we play and how we integrate a life that is professional and personal and one that we can be proud of. And so how we're going to be running today is Susan is going to be talking about what it is to be fully human. And I will be monitoring the chat box and the Q&A box. And I've not been good at this. So CJ, who is with us as well, we thank him because he's going to be on it with me. So we will be looking at any questions that I will be sharing with Susan, but Susan will already be sharing her message, which I think that, I don't know, I've got a cup of coffee here and I'm like, oh, I'm just going to actually sit and listen for a bit. So Susan, I'm deeply grateful for you joining. I will be looking at the question box. So if you would like to share your thoughts on what it is to be fully human, I would appreciate that.
Okay, well, wonderful. Well, good morning, everyone. Are you experiencing COVID fatigue? Zoom fatigue? Isolation fatigue? I'm feeling a little bit isolated because I can't see all of you, as I can see Leanne though, and Leanne has promised, and she has promised to laugh at all my jokes. So just take your lead from her. I'm really delighted to be here. I have a bit of a history with the Tepper School, and it's just great to be here to talk about emotional fitness, which is the idea behind this book that came out in 2019. So, you know, as and some of you are working, I understand, and some of you are students, but as we get into the workplace, we begin to rise in the organization, we are what I call transactional managers. So we have our expertise in a certain skill area, grow our expertise to other skill areas, and we are in a process of, you know, busyness and transacting. That's my first book, New Rules of the Game, was about that. So it's sort of the outer work, the technical skills, the ways that you can be successful with that. This one was taking a deeper dive and looking at how we grow from transactional managers to transformative leaders. And that movement requires inner work, and the inner work of the heart, growing your spiritual depth, your connectivity to people, all of those things. And in my experience, it was the harder work that I needed to do. And I was very lucky because when I joined HGTV, and I'll talk about that, I was in a community of people that, that really helped with that. So pretend like COVID hasn't happened, because I'm going to show you a video that my team and I produced prior to COVID. And just to give you a sense of what it feels like to be a transactional manager. I don't know if any of you can relate to that. So when you become a transformative leader, emotional fitness is a part of that. And I'm going to talk about the 3 steps to grow into transformative leadership or to grow into emotional fitness. And I found that the best way to describe something that is somewhat complex, because when it comes to inner work, it's not that black and white area that's easier for us to talk about, is to give an example of what the opposite of it looks like, okay? So this is a story of when we were building HGTV and we had this monster business on our hands. And we were in the midst of growing it, and the Food Network. We had bought the Food Network and we were growing that. And then we launched DIY and we were growing that. In the middle of all that, my mom and sister died within 28 days of one another, both unexpectedly, both independent events. And we had just purchased another business that was a home shopping business that we were all excited about. We were going to turn it into a home and garden shopping network. And we had this plan to do a retreat, a half-day retreat, all hands on deck, get excited about the launch. And this happens to me. And a couple days after all of this happened, and I was in this place of really being frozen, not knowing what to do about this deep grief. I couldn't even identify it, what the emotion was. So I got in my car, drove the 2.5 hours to the retreat, cried the whole way, got in the parking lot, cleaned myself up, went into the meeting, didn't hear a word anyone said, didn't contribute at all, got back in my car and drove home. And I did a grave disservice to my teams, the organization, by even seeing me there, because we had on our wall core values like work-life balance, compassion, support. What did this mean for the culture of the place that the leader who's just gone through what is a horrendous experience for anyone is showing up at work? But I did as equal a disservice to myself, because what I didn't understand then is that emotions like grief need to be walked through. You cannot rush grief. That is just one example of emotional fitness. You get to a place where you understand these things and you have self-compassion. And when I came into HGTV, I was quite robotic, right? I was a great transactional manager. I had excellent technical skills, but I needed to grow into transformative leadership. So these guys helped me a lot. This is the startup team. We took this picture a couple of years ago. We were celebrating 20 years of being on the air. We didn't look like this when we launched. Anybody who's done startups knows that you age in dog years. The guy to my left is Ken Lowe, and I mentioned him because HGTV was his idea. He hired me, and then so I was a second employee, and then we fanned out and hired a team of people. And the most important thing they taught me was the power of trust. And I'll get to that in a minute. So our goal, and I think we accomplished this, was to build a culture of openness and respect. We put values on the wall like work-life balance, inclusion, shared responsibility, compassion, support. And I believe we accomplished what our mission was in terms of building a culture like that. And passion and purpose are real drivers of why you want to come to work every day, right? If you don't feel passion, if you don't feel purpose, and these days, it may mean just shuffling out into your study and putting on your computer, and that's going to work. But still, if you don't feel these things, it's hard for you to be successful personally. And we try to create a culture around with passion and purpose. But let's take a look at what's going on in the world today, in our country. And these statistics are pre-COVID. So COVID has just thrown a whole additional amount of weight against these statistics. We have a lot of emotional pain in this country. Over 40 million suffering from social anxiety, over 21 million in substance abuse, more suicides than homicides. And as I said, this is before COVID. If you pay attention to any of the mental health picture, which I do, these numbers have grown quite a lot. So, and when you have, it doesn't have to be the death of your mother and sister for you to feel emotional pain. It can be smaller things. It can be you found out that morning that your child flunked their math test. Whatever it is, you carry these unsettled emotions on your back unless you find ways to dispel them, healthy ways to dispel them. And that's what emotional fitness is about. And that's what the tools that I have in the book are about. And I'm going to mention a few of the tools and give you examples today. So keep that national health picture in your mind. Now we move into the leadership picture. And this was an interesting statistic that I uncovered, that 1 out of 5 CEOs exhibit some form of psychopathic behavior. I hope you don't know someone like this or work for someone like this, but the reality for leadership still today is that it is a group of people, and I'll just talk about the CEO level. Many people in the C-suite today are unrelatable and are hardly human at all. That your job as a CEO is to inspire, connect, and motivate your people. And the folks that work for these psychopaths, they don't want to model. the behavior that they're seeing. They can't even connect to those folks. So you all, one of the reasons I love speaking to students and those that are new in the workforce is you are our future. You can change all of this. I am confident you will change all of this so that, you know, and of course it's the cliche of the 60-year-old white guy. And, you know, often cliches are true, but all of that is changing. And you all are in a power seat to help us change it. So just another example of what Price Waterhouse did a study in 2018, and they looked at all of the CEOs that had been dismissed from their organizations. And over half were dismissed because of ethical violations, not their P&L and how they managed it, ethical violations. So you can see that we have a lot of work to do to move into a place where we have honorable people lead. A slower pace to the right thing. This is another HGTV story. So, and I'm going to tell on myself a lot the next hour. So I want you to have a sense of what it looks like when you're in transaction and before you move into transformative leadership. So we bought the Food Network, Leanne's favorite network. And this was the fall of '97. And it was broken. I mean, it was a mess and it was our job to clean it up. We had been managing HGTV about 3 years. We could see that we were going to actually turn a profit, which was amazing in 3 years for a cable network, which the average is 7, but most don't make it at all. And so, you know, we had this down, right? So we buy the Food Network, and my plan is the day after it closes, I am going to march into New York City, which is where the staff was in Manhattan, and with my team behind me, and I'm going to lob a grenade, and I'm going to wipe out, and we're going to just take over, right? Mm-hmm. And this is what I had been shown before moving into HGTV. Mm-hmm. And we're only as good as what we learn on the job, right? In our own intuitive sense. Mm-hmm. So my boss, Ken Lowe, so Ken was CEO, I was COO, said, slow down. Do we even know the brand they are trying to create? It may be wrong, but do we really understand it? Do we have their institutional knowledge, like how to manage unions in New York City? Do we know that there are no employees here that we may want to keep? Let's take it slower. And, you know, I learned resilience. I learned patience. These are great qualities of emotional fitness. I learned that a lot of me was reacting from an outer egoic way. Hey, I'm going to take over now. I'm going to be run two networks. See, these are the things you learn when you move from transactional to transformative and when you become emotionally fit. So emotional fitness is a derivative. Let me say it differently. Emotional intelligence is derived from emotional fitness. So emotional intelligence, and I'll define it in a minute, but the idea, it's the foundation, if you will. So it's how we relate to one another, how we can read other people's emotions and respond appropriately, and our management of our own emotions. Emotional fitness takes this idea and grows it, and moves it from really one element and dimension of self to all dimensions of self. So it takes into account our cognitive dimension. It takes into account our physicality, because that's part of emotions. We carry emotions in our bodies. And it takes into account our emotional and spiritual, which I call psychospiritual, dimension of self as well. So as I said, this is EQ, or emotional intelligence. You've probably been somewhere along the way, you've learned what EQ is. And this idea of identifying and responding well to others' emotions, I had that down pat because I have a lot of empathy. It's how I'm built. So I could respond to others' emotions. But my ability to identify and manage my own emotions, not so much. I'm 39 years old. I'm CEO of this enormous growing business, and I had a lot of work to do there. And it's funny. This morning I was looking through a file, and I came across this. This is a quote from Carl Jung, the famous psychoanalyst. And his quote was, "Any person who is 40, who has no sense of who he or she is or where he or she is going, cannot avoid becoming neurotic." So it was like I had 6 months, before I was going to become a neurotic. I don't think I made it, by the way. I'm not sure what my people would say about that. But anyway, so the good news is I recognized that I had work to do here, and I had a wonderful team who helped me. Emotional intelligence is still one of the top 10 skills for new hires, important for all of you as you look for work or are in work. And I think a lot of this is because we have become such a technology-driven culture. EQ fitness, so emotional fitness at work, I call EQ fitness, is a place, this is how it feels. It feels like a place of steadiness, peace of mind, and joy. And it is a practice, much like physical fitness. In fact, I chose the word fitness for that reason. You don't go to the gym once and you get physically fit. It's a lifetime. I mean, today I work out to stay physically fit. And the good news on once you get the steps down, it's a joyful thing. You enjoy doing this because you know that you're improving yourself. You're making yourself better. So there are 3 steps, and we're going to go through them. The first is willingness, then trust, and then it moves into we principles. And I'll explain each one of these. And they all are a part of our self. The first self is to gain some critical self-knowledge. And that is everything from how we're wired, which is important when we think about what job we want to take, to the deeper inner work that we need to do, looking at our values, our principles, what we believe in. And are they aligned? Are these inner values aligned with our outer work? Because if they're not, you're going to feel very unsettled. So willingness to do some exploration and kind of look under the covers a little bit about what you're all about. Then we move into trust. And trust starts with trusting yourself enough to enter into what if it's true trust, it is a vulnerable relationship. And vulnerability is really hard to do if you have zero trust, and if you have zero trust in yourself, because you're taking risk. And so that's what trust is about. Talk a little bit about that. And then we principles is where we step up from transactional to transformative leadership. It is when we are in service to something greater than our own self-interest. And in organizations, when you run them, that is the organization, its culture, and its people. Okay. So EQ fitness I use these terms interchangeably, so just bear with me as we go through this. So willingness. So Socrates in 500 BC was telling us that to do the willingness work means we need to live an examined life. We need to look under the hood about how we're made and what we believe in and what our principles are and what has driven us to get to our adult life, especially if we feel unsettled emotions around certain things. So Anissa, she's in my book. She obviously gave me permission to talk about her story. I coached Anissa for many years. She approached me. She ran a company, a successful company she founded. But she said to me, Susan, I don't feel like I'm the complete CEO and I want your help. And I said, okay, so where don't you feel complete? And she said, I can't really describe it. So I said, all right, let's start with all of the jobs you've had in your life. Tell me about them. Tell me about your experience with them. And so she did. So she told me about her various jobs. And at one point, as a young adult, she worked for her mother. And I said, oh, that's interesting. How was that? And she said, I never felt like I was enough. And if I ever forgot that, she was right there to remind me. And she said that, and she looked startled that she had said that. So giving voice to someone you trust, whether it's a coach, in the case of us, Anissa and I, a therapist, a best friend, giving voice to what's keeping you stuck is a really important part of how you move from being unsettled to settled. And when you do that, and when she did that, you can do a reset, right? Because what's remarkable about giving voice to something is that it loses its power over you. And it's almost like clean slate. Okay, that happened. I understand. And the tool that I call this in Fully Human is name it, claim it, let it go, right? Name it. I was in deep grief for the loss of my sister and my mother. Claim it. Spend the time you need to move beyond that point of not being able to deal with it to dealing with it. And then you can get to a place where, I mean, grief stays with you really all your life, but it transforms itself and is less painful. Okay, so name it, claim it, let it go. Greg Boyle is the founder of Homeboy Industries. It is the most successful gang intervention program in the country. It's LA based. And, I think that we as business people always look at those Fortune 500 guys, they're our role models and our leaders. Well, the fact is there are so many powerful leaders in the nonprofit sector, and Greg is one. And what Greg's role has been is to gently extract young adult, mostly boys, some girls, from gangs. And they're there because they've needed protection, usually from their home life. And as he gently extracts them and gives them jobs and transforms them, he says, you need to do 3 things. You need to find your story, tell your story, find your story, name it, tell your story, claim it, and know you're the hero at the end of your story. And I think that is a really powerful message I want to impart to all of you. You go into your organizations and you can be the hero. And it doesn't have to mean running the company. You can have such impact on other people just by doing what's honorable. Okay. So I'm going to lighten it up a little bit here. if any of you saw me on LinkedIn recently in the last, I don't know, 2 or 3 weeks, I had told a story, and I'm going to retell this story. So name it, claim it, let it go. Great advice. I've never really been good at taking my own advice. I'm pretty stubborn that way, but I eventually get there. So my job, one of my jobs as I grew in leadership was always to negotiate with cable operators and to get distribution on cable systems for whatever networks I was working for. And this was the wild, wild west for many years. And, these guys were monopolists, and these negotiations were incredibly contentious. But I never wanted to talk about it, never wanted to bring it home, never wanted to do any of that. I was stoic, except one night I'd had a particularly difficult negotiation. So I came home, and my poor husband, Bill, was the recipient of name it, claim it, let it go, right? So I'm telling him about it, and I'm saying, this moron, you can't believe what an idiot. He was such an asshole. And forgive my language, but it is what I said. At which point, I hear the shuffle of little feet coming into the kitchen. And there's our 5-year-old, and he's looking up at me, and he's heard everything. And he says, Mom, what's that guy's number? I'm going to call that asshole. So the point is, when you name it, claim it, let it go, make sure that your environment is safe to do it in. Okay. Willingness, step 1. Better self-understanding, more peace of mind, and you grow in self-worth as a result of doing this process. And again, even step 1, all of these steps, you don't do them just once, because it's not like there's one moment in time that you're unsettled emotionally, right? So it's a practice. Now I'm going to turn to how we're wired, which is the other part of willingness, understanding how we're wired, what we're made of, so that we can have the best job fit as possible. So these are just some examples. If, for example, you have an adventurer nature, you love to be in the outdoors, why are you inside in an office working? See, the questions that you ask yourself about alignment. If you are particularly sensitive, why are you in a cold, hard culture? When these things don't align, if you are a problem solver, a puzzle solver, but your job is just putting out fires, and you never have time to think, all of these will create feelings of being unsettled. So knowing your temperament is really important. And, you can go online, and it can be a Myers-Briggs, it can be a Hogan, it can be Berkman. There's lots of diagnostic tools. The one I love and is not used much is the Enneagram, because the Enneagram takes into account all of the dimensions of ourselves, our cognitive, our physicality, and our heart or psycho-spiritual. So again, you can Google this, you can take the test, but it's a way for you to know yourself better. And as Mark Twain said, the 2 most important days in your life are the day you're born and the day you learn why. And that's what willingness is about. How we're made, which includes not just how we're wired, but how did we get to where we are as adults? How did Anissa get to a place where she felt incomplete as a leader? Understanding those parts of ourselves. And when we do, we find how we can belong to the rest of the world, how we can give our gifts back. And that's pretty exciting. Okay, trust. So I don't know if any of you have ever done a trust fall. So trust, I found my team at HGTV, we did not do a trust fall, thank God, but taught me the power of trust, that it helps you to move with speed and focus. And it helps you to leave out all the messy human drama that can creep into a workplace. And I'm going to show you, I hope this works. This is 2 girls doing a trust fall. Trust fall, by the way, is when, if you do, it's an exercise, a team building exercise. You get together with your team and you do these things and you completely trust them with your life, basically. But take a look at this, 2 girls doing trust fall.
And close your eyes and just fall down, okay? Don't worry.
Okay, then Lauren's gonna catch
Well, you
you.
can hear it anyway.
Okay.
Okay, it's called the trust fall. Okay, trust fall. Ready, set, go.
So the end of it, I'm going to have to make this up here for you. The end of it is the little girl falls forward instead of falling backward, which is typically what happens in a trust fall. I'm going to figure out what to do with that. Maybe get it embedded so that it actually works. Okay, so trust building takes action. Trust is an emotion, which, as I said, vulnerability is part of that, taking some risk, but it takes action as well. And the first action it takes is to be steady. So this is where your physicality is involved, right? And let me give you an example of this. This is a tool for trust called HALT. The moment you agree to do something, let me go back before I get to HALT. The moment you, in trust, agree to do something, say, yes, I will do it, raise your hand. You have committed to something that if for whatever reason, unless, death or something, you can't fulfill it, that's the first moment where there's a little schism that's built between you and another person. And every time you don't do what you say you're going to do, which is called having integrity, that builds. And I will tell you that having coached many women, we tend to say yes to everything. I will do this. I will sign up for this. And I had one woman who, it was always staff related things, non-line things. Her CEO would say, hey, can somebody manage the United Way campaign? Yeah, I'll do it. Things that had nothing, that's great, but it had nothing to do with her own ability and growing her outer and inner skills, right? Staff functions versus line functions. So watch for that. Commit to what you can actually do. All right, steadiness, which is physicality. Okay, HALT. 4 steps to HALT. Are you hungry? Ask yourself these questions. Are you hungry? Are you angry? Are you lonely? Are you tired? If you are any of those things, you can fix them, and you need to fix them. There was a guy I worked with who I just never knew which Joe I was going to get when I went into work and had a meeting with him, because he was up and down, and a lot of it was diet. I always brought raisins, boxes of raisins to work, whatever it takes. And are you tired? Tired is a big one. So remember HALT, and there are things you can do for each of these that can help you. And I will tell you that if you're a new parent, the T does not apply because all new parents are tired. But other than that, you should be able to get some good rest. Okay, be dependable. And this gets back to do what you say you will do. This is another story of HGTV. So one of my responsibilities was, as we weren't even launched yet, but I was going to begin and grow our international department. And the first place I was going was Canada. to get licensed in Canada because I knew, having done work in there in a former job, that they were closing their borders to the import of foreign networks. So I knew that we needed to get a partner and we needed to get a license quickly if we were to do business in Canada, which I knew we needed to do. So anyway, I chose a partner. It came down to us, the partner and I, testifying in front of a tribunal, which they call the CRTC there, think FCC here in the US, and, arguing our case. So Ken Lowe, he said, look, I'm just going to come and sit in the audience to support you. And I thought, isn't that wonderful? Thank you, great. Well, as Canada is wont to do, there was an enormous snowstorm, whiteout snowstorm, and it closed the Ottawa airport, which is where the hearings were. So no Ken, which made sense. I had gotten there a couple of days earlier so that I could rehearse with our partner. So the morning of the hearings, I'm sitting at this long table and the commissioners are up there and they're, it's all very intimidating. And in walks this sort of rumpled guy who needs a shave. And I look and I recognize that it's Ken. And he comes over and he realizes it's starting and he says, well, I got as far as Philadelphia and then the airport was closed. So I got in a van with a group of people and we drove here nonstop. I just got here and I'm looking at him and I'm not believing it. And he said, I told you I'd show. Still get teary when I think about that moment of trust. I tried every way imaginable not to trust these people. I didn't want to trust these people, but they were so trustworthy. I had no choice. And, when you can get to that place where you actually feel comfortable building trust because they are worthy of your trust, it is really a lovely place to be. Okay, so be human. So this is the third point on trust. Be human. And I'm going to use Tim Cook, CEO of Apple, as an example here. So he spoke he did the commencement address for MIT a few years back. And he said this to them. He said, technology can do great things, but technology doesn't want to do great things because technology doesn't want to do anything. So I believe in reading between the lines, what he was saying is, as leaders, be thoughtful about how you deploy technology. And I will tell you that COVID will change a lot of things in this realm, including it will call into question whether people should be working physically together, and whether technology should really drive, communication versus face-to-face communication. But I will tell you that as human beings, we need to belong. And in a culture, that is what happens when you build physically side by side. You gain a sense of belonging and a belonging to something bigger than you, the purpose of the organization where you work. So as you maybe are leaders today, become leaders, be thoughtful about how technology is deployed. All right, so we're on the third step, which is we principles. And this is really where you move from transactional to transformative leadership, from me to we. And, we need ego. And when I say ego, I'm not talking about puffed up pride, but we need to have a solid sense of self to lead. And I call that ego energy. But we also need soul energy, S-O-U-L, not S-O-L-E, energy. And it's left brain, right brain. So left brain is linear, analytical, process, organization. And we need all of those parts of us that help us to be in charge and to lead and to be decisive. But we can be tough-minded and kind-hearted as leaders. And I would argue we must be today. Because I don't think, well, I would ask you as our future leaders, I mean, is it acceptable to be assholes? Excuse me for, there's that word again, but I would say no, it is not acceptable. And you all can change that. So I highlight in the book 3 areas. And, again, these are about inspiring, connecting, and motivating employees. And when I work with leaders today, I tell them they need to subtract things, right? They have technical skills down. They need to subtract things like puffed up pride and power trips and self-interest as the number one motivator. They need to subtract those things. And when you do, and when you drop judgments on others that may not look like you, and when you peel away pretense and you do all those things, my favorite writer, Thomas Merton, who is a theologian, he passed away in 1968. At the center of our being is a point of pure truth. This is where your most authentic self resides. This is where you find the inner depth, the spiritual depth you need to lead in an honorable, kind-hearted, but tough-minded way, all of the above. And it requires that willingness work and tremendous self-honesty to do it. So some of the soul tools, prayer and meditation, Leanne knows I meditate every morning. I start 20 minutes, I wake up, have a cup of coffee, and I sit for 20 minutes, and it grounds me for the day. In all the writing work I do, again, I meditate before I do it. So all of these in the natural world, being out in nature, being reminded that there are things that are much bigger than you, finding purpose in your work. Other soul tools are music. Einstein it was said that he listened to classical music before he worked on his equations. Dance. I read poetry this morning before, reading things to open your right brain, where your connection resides, where compassion resides. These are just a few examples, and there are several in the book. Okay, because I knew I needed to have a 60-year-old white guy. Actually, Paul Pullman is awesome. He's in my book. He left Unilever last year after maybe a dozen years there, CEO. Unilever is a 52 billion euro company with brands like these. It's basically the P&G of Europe. And he created purpose around a program he put in place with his employees called the Sustainable Living Plan. And basically the plan was, and he put it in place in 2008, 2009, by 2025, he said, 50%, we are going to reduce the carbon imprint of the products that we make by 50%. And when he left last year, I think it was over 20% of a reduction, and everybody got behind it and shared that sense of purpose. And I was interested to read the woman they chose, Erica Jones at Wharton. She's the new dean. And she has on her mind how business impacts society. And this is another part of transformative leadership, is thinking through how does business impact society, whether it's climate change, whether it's immigration, whether it's the fact that women and minorities have mostly had to pull out of the workplace because of COVID and having to be caregivers. All of these things are profound questions that we will need to tackle once we are in a place where we can move on. So this is a picture of Ken and I when we were starting out. It's really a picture of two people with very bad haircuts. But I have it there just to say, success, I learned that success also meant not just transactional skills. Success also meant recognizing those around me who could bring out the best in me. And don't forget that. That's an important thing for you. Working with people who can bring out the best in you is very powerful. And another right brain tool is lightness, leading with lightness. You know, great leaders bring lightness to the workplace. We had on our wall as one of our core values, humor, which we got a lot of questions about from our analysts and other people, but we stuck with it because we understood the power of lightness. When you're building a business, when you're in, you know, that kind of stress, having lightness is very important. So we did a lot of different things. We did goofy things to, you know, important things like putting humor on a wall as a core value. One of the kind of goofy things we did was we created 1,000 bumper stickers which said this. Now, you may not really even get it, right? But I hope you do. And this is the thing about humor, is that a lot of times, you know, people don't get your humor, but we were trying to create an environment that had lightness to it. And we also took our relationship with our viewer we took it seriously, but we led with lightness. And I'm going to show you a promotion that we did for a show when we got on the air called Cash in the Attic.
We let Grandma bring her living room stuff when she moved in with us. We thought it would make the transition easier.
It'd make her feel more at home.
HGTV's Cash in the Attic can sell all this furniture at auction. You can use that money for a whole room makeover.
I don't really...
It's her stuff.
Can we get a hot tub?
Old stuff, big bucks. Cash in the Attic. New series premieres tonight at 8 on HGTV.
Cash in the Attic took your old furniture to auction to get you money for home improvements. How did we do?
Oh, that hot tub is great. And it was so worth taking the stuff to the auction.
The whole experience has shown us another side of Grandma.
It's a side I never knew was there before.
Cash in the Attic. Mondays at 8, only on HGTV.
We had a lot of fun with promotions. That was just one. Okay, so the build is from emotional intelligence, or EQ, through working these 3 steps to emotional fitness or transformative leadership. And when you do that, you stretch and you grow into being a powerful leader. And really that's what fully human is all about. And that's what emotional fitness offers to you. So I hope that, you know, you've gained some insight and hopefully maybe a little inspiration in going to work and in, you know, finding a job that fits you and modeling. Always remember that as you move into leadership, modeling for the next generation, because that is your legacy.
Susan, thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. We I have so much to say, but we have three great questions, well, two questions and a hands up. So if I could, I want to honor people's time. So I'm going to go straight to questions, if that's
Oh,
good.
Yeah.
And so the first question, it popped up when you were speaking about name it, claim it, let it go. And the question is, how do you choose who is the right person to give voice to? How do you differentiate between needing help and pushing your problems onto someone else? So if you could
Right.
respond to that, that would be terrific.
Right. Well, that's why my recommendation would be a trusted other who has no dog in the fight other than your best interests. And so that often means you actually have to hire them, whether that's a coach or a therapist.
Yeah.
It might be it could be your best friend if you believe that they will tell you the truth. And by the way, that's a reciprocal thing. You don't just unload on someone. I mean, if it's a best friend, then it's a reciprocal relationship.
Wonderful. Thank you. The next question popped up when you were speaking about staff functions versus line functions,
Right.
and how to know where to take on something new to grow in the right direction. And I would love this because we spend a lot of time talking to our students about being very busy with non-promotable tasks. So if you could talk to that, that would be lovely. Thank you.
Yeah. So line work, the simplest way to think about it is it involves revenue. So you might not necessarily be in a sales role, but you might be in a product development role, which means you're producing products that for your organization, which will be sold. New business development, marketing. These are, it's been debated as marketing line or is it staff, but if you think of it from the standpoint of I am accountable for sales, then that's that's an important function. And so I would say that the best way to think about it is revenue associated with it. Our task forces that grow new businesses, those kinds of things are great ideas for you to participate in.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Susan. Thank you. I've asked Hajidat to perhaps submit a question. CJ, I'm not sure, can someone speak on a webinar or not? Someone's raised their hand and I'm just not sure if we can hear the question.
Yes, we can do that if they cannot submit it via text.
Is it possible to unmute Hajidat? Sorry, and I'm probably saying the name incorrectly, so I apologize. Hajidat, if you could ask your question, that would be lovely. Hadijat, would you like to share your question? You're on mute at the moment.
Hi.
Hi.
I didn't realize I was. Well, mine is more of a comment, and I'm very excited I was able to join, and I've been able to learn a lot, about leadership. Thank you so very much for this.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Thank you, Hadijat. So Susan, that was a thank you and an appreciation for the event. And then Elizabeth writes, I think it would be great if we could end with her comment because I think it captures so much of what you are sharing with us today. And Elizabeth shares, this really resonates with me. When in an unexpected crisis, my supervisor and mentor told me to take time off of work and allowed me the space for self-compassion that I would have never given myself on my own. It began me on a path of self-discovery and healing that I carry on today. Wonderful. And so thank you, Elizabeth, for that. And thank you so much, Susan. I'm sure all the participants agree. It's always a grounding experience being in your presence. And it was a call to me. I was taking notes of all the things that I want to go and think about. I think when you talk about a person's passion and purpose, I think for many of us on the call, it probably stirred up a whole lot of thinking that perhaps some of us can spend time over the season thinking about, because the new year could hold a lot of promise for many of us. So Susan, thank you so much for your time. And we thank you so much. The participants have come from all over, which is very exciting. And that's what I'm grateful for. Technology allows us to open up learning in ways we have not before as universities. So yes.
Can I mention too, yeah, so as we're departing, just a couple of things, ladies. I offer a newsletter that it's free, everything's free. If you have any interest, just go to susanpackard.com and scroll to the bottom and throw your name and email in there. And that would be great if you're interested. And the other thing is, if you do get the book and you want to do an Amazon review, I always offer a coaching session for those that do that. So just those two things I wanted to mention before and thank you. And as I said, you are our future. So, you know, I'm just delighted that I was able to spend a little time with you, and I wish you all the best, and I hope you have a happy and safe holiday.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you, Susan. Thank you, panelists. We're having lovely thank yous from all over the globe, Susan, in the chat box. So thank you all for your time. We look forward to staying in contact, and have a very happy season for those who are celebrating. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye.